He laughed at her in the airport, certain she was nobody. But minutes later, a private jet arrived just for her. What happened next didn't just silence him, it revealed the power of quiet strength, patience, and unseen sacrifices. Stay till the end. This story will change the way you see success and self-worth. Before we dive into this incredible story, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss our powerful, life-changing content. Her ex-husband mocked her at the airport, until the private jet sent for her changed everything. I stood at the airport with a single carry-on bag and a heart that had learned how to be quiet. The terminal smelled like coffee and polished floors, and every sound felt louder than my thoughts. I had arrived early because being early made me feel less invisible. That was when I heard his laugh. Sharp, familiar, cruel in a way that once lived in my house. My ex-husband stood a few steps away, tailored suit, confident smile, surrounded by people who nodded at everything he said. When his eyes landed on me, his smile turned into something else. Something amused. "Well," he said loudly enough for others to hear, "traveling economy suits you." He glanced at my simple clothes and my modest bag like they confirmed a story he loved telling about me. I felt the old heat rise in my chest. The kind that comes from remembering years of being told I was too slow, too soft, too much work. The kind that comes from surviving. I smiled anyway. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I had learned that dignity doesn't need witnesses. We had once stood side by side dreaming of a future. Then the dreams became deadlines. Then the deadlines became blame. And one day, love turned into paperwork. After the divorce, I lost more than a marriage. I lost friends who chose comfort over truth. I lost nights of sleep and mornings of hope. But I gained something quieter. I gained patience. At the gate, I sat beside an elderly woman who noticed my shaking hands. She didn't ask questions. She simply offered me a warm smile and half of her biscuit. Kindness doesn't always speak. I thanked her and felt my breathing slow. Sometimes, strangers hold us together better than people who promised forever. Then it happened. The moment of shock that split the air around me. An airport staff member approached and gently said my name. I looked up, confused. My ex-husband looked up too. The staff member continued respectfully. Your transport has arrived. Transport. I laughed softly, certain there was a mistake. But the woman repeated my name. Correctly, carefully. Outside the glass walls, a sleek private jet waited on the runway. Sunlight reflected off its wings like a promise kept. The terminal went quiet. My ex-husband stopped smiling. I stood slowly, my legs unsure, my heart racing. I asked if there had been an error. The staff member smiled and shook her head. A client has arranged this flight for you, she said. He asked that you be treated with care. Memories rushed in. Long nights. Extra shifts. Quiet sacrifices no one applauded. Years earlier, I had worked tirelessly behind the scenes of a struggling startup. I believed in the vision when no one else did. When the company succeeded, I walked away with nothing but experience and integrity. Apparently, someone had been watching. My ex-husband stepped closer, his voice suddenly softer. "What's this about?" he asked. I met his eyes without anger, without pride, just truth. "It's about work," I said. "And time." As I walked toward the gate, the elderly woman squeezed my hand. "Good people are always seen," she whispered. On the jet, I sat by the window and let the quiet surround me. Not the lonely quiet of loss, but the peaceful quiet of arrival. The client later called to thank me for my honesty years ago. He said integrity was rare and unforgettable. He said kindness compounds. When we landed, I wasn't thinking about my ex-husband anymore. I was thinking about how pain can polish a soul instead of breaking it. Life doesn't always reward us immediately. Sometimes it waits until we stop asking for applause. The moral is simple and true. Stay sincere when no one is watching. Be kind even when mocked. Your moment may arrive quietly, but it will change everything. I didn't know then that this journey was only the beginning, not the reward. The private jet wasn't the destination. It was the doorway. As the plane lifted, My thoughts drifted back to the years I had nearly forgotten. Years when I woke before sunrise and slept after midnight. Years when my hands ached from work and my heart ached from silence. I remembered cooking dinners that went cold while waiting for appreciation that never arrived. I remembered being told, again and again, that love should not be so demanding. I learned too late that love is not supposed to make you feel small. When the jet landed, a driver greeted me with quiet respect. No flashy words. No curiosity. Just professionalism and kindness. As the car moved through the city, I watched people walking hurriedly, carrying invisible burdens. I wondered how many of them were standing at their own airports, being judged by someone who once promised to love them. At the hotel, a handwritten note waited for me. It thanked me for believing when belief was inconvenient. It thanked me for staying honest when cutting corners would have been easier. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally allowed myself to cry. Not from pain this time, but from release. Tears can mean many things. Sometimes they are grief. Sometimes they are healing. Later that evening, I attended a small gathering arranged by the same client. Nothing grand. Just people who valued substance over status. No one asked about my past marriage. No one measured me by what I wore or where I came from. They asked about my ideas, my values, my vision. For the first time in a long while, I spoke freely. My voice didn't shake. My thoughts didn't apologize for existing. As the night unfolded, I realized something important. Success doesn't always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it arrives softly, like someone finally listening. Back at the airport the next morning, fate offered me one more mirror. I saw my ex-husband again, this time alone. No crowd, no laughter. Our eyes met briefly. There was confusion in his, understanding in mine. I didn't feel the need to explain anything. I didn't need his validation anymore. Growth doesn't demand permission. I walked past him with calm steps and a full heart. Not because I had more than him, but because I had found myself again. And as the boarding call echoed through the terminal, I understood something deeply true. Hard times do not erase kind souls. They reveal them. The story wasn't about a private jet. It was about endurance, about quiet work, about love for oneself reborn through patience. And I knew, with gentle certainty, that this was only the middle of my story. The boarding call faded behind me, but its echo stayed in my chest. Not as noise, as permission. On the next flight, seated among strangers, I noticed how light my body felt. Not because life had become easy, but because I was no longer carrying shame that never belonged to me. The clouds outside the window looked like unfinished thoughts. Soft, endless, waiting to be shaped. I thought about the woman I used to be. The one who apologized for taking space. The one who confused endurance with love. I hadn't been weak. I had been faithful to effort. And effort, when ignored, doesn't disappear. It transforms. In the days that followed, meetings filled my schedule. Real conversations. Careful listening. Respectful disagreements. People valued my work not because it was loud, but because it was consistent. They trusted me not because I impressed them, but because I never betrayed the small details. One afternoon, during a break, I sat alone in a quiet cafe. A young woman at the next table kept checking her phone, her eyes tired, her shoulders tense. I recognized that posture. When she finally sighed, our eyes met. I smiled gently. She smiled back, surprised, like kindness had caught her off guard. Hard day? I asked softly. She nodded. Hard life, she corrected. I didn't offer advice. I didn't tell her it would all be okay. I simply listened. Sometimes, being heard is the beginning of rescue. As she spoke, I realized something else. Pain doesn't make us bitter by default. It gives us a choice. That night, alone in my room, I opened my laptop and reread old journals. Pages filled with doubt. With hope scratched out and rewritten. I didn't cringe anymore. I felt tenderness. Every version of me had done her best with what she knew. Days later, an unexpected email arrived. An invitation to lead a project I once only dreamed of contributing to. Not because of luck, because someone remembered how I showed up when it mattered. I paused before replying. Not from fear, from gratitude. Outside, the city lights flickered like quiet applause. I didn't bow to them. I breathed them in. Somewhere, I knew my ex-husband still told his version of our story. I no longer needed to correct it. Truth has a longer lifespan than pride. As I prepared for the next chapter, I understood something gentle and powerful. Healing doesn't arrive as revenge. It arrives as alignment. And I stepped forward, not rushing, not proving, just becoming. At last, I returned to the same airport where everything had once felt so heavy. The same floors, the same gates, but a completely different heart. I stood still for a moment and watched people pass by. Some confident, some broken, some pretending they were fine. I realized then that life doesn't change because we are seen by others. Life changes when we finally see ourselves. I thought of my ex-husband, not with anger, not with triumph, but with understanding. He had measured worth by appearances. I had learned to measure it by effort, honesty, and compassion. The private jet had shocked him, but it was never meant to impress him. It was meant to remind me that quiet dedication is never wasted, that sincere work always finds its way back to the soul that offered it, that kindness, even when mocked, plants seeds we may not live to see bloom, but they do bloom. I smiled as my flight was called, not because I had one, but because I was finally free. Free from needing approval. Free from explaining my value. Free from shrinking to fit someone else's comfort. As I walked forward, I carried no bitterness, only gratitude. For the pain that taught me patience. For the silence that taught me strength. For the struggle that revealed my own worth. And this is the lesson my journey left behind for anyone listening. Never underestimate quiet perseverance. Never mock a soul in progress. And never believe that kindness goes unnoticed. Life has a way of honoring sincere hearts. Not always loudly, not always immediately, but always meaningfully. Sometimes, everything changes not when we are applauded by the world, but when we finally stand tall within ourselves. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it touched your heart, please share it, leave a comment below, and let someone know. You are never alone.